Today we're going to talk a little bit about painting our pumpkins that we made out of plaster. This watercolor palette is messy. This is not one that you want to find or want to use. We also don't want to leave this kind of dirty watercolor palette behind because it will not give us great colors. Our colors will be dirty. Alright, so I'm going to get a fresher watercolor palette here. We're also going to be using some oil pastels. I'm going to start off by showing you what to do with the oil pastels, how you can use those to color on your pumpkin, and then I'm going to move on to the watercolors. Something we do want to keep in mind is that we used water to wet the plaster cloth and wrap it around our paper center. So when we do use these paints and waters, it is going to make the plaster soft, which could make it easier to reform, but also to damage if we aren't careful. So here I'm using oil pastels. I want to create 3 different tones: a light, a mid-tone, and a shadow. I'm using a light orange, a dark medium orange, and an orange red here to create the highlights and the shadows. I want to try to keep the high areas of my pumpkin lighter and the lower areas of my pumpkin darker. I am layering them up. I thought I'd add a little bit of water to them to see if that kind of helped spread the oil pastels around and into those grooves that they were not filling in. It didn't. So we're gonna go ahead and paint on top of that with the watercolors and see what happens here. And it's kind of cool looking. It gives a little bit of a really neat texture look. I'm doing the same thing with my watercolors that I did with my oil pastels. I'm creating 3 different midtones, sticking with my lighter colors on the higher areas. I'm going into the midtones now with the lighter areas. One thing you do want to keep in mind when you are painting, you want to keep as little water on the brush as possible because, again, like I said earlier, it does soften up that plaster, and we don't want that plaster to be too soft because we don't want to accidentally crush it or bend it out of shape. So here I'm going with a darker red to create that shadowed look near the bottom of the pumpkin, as well as in the shallow areas of the pumpkin that look like little valleys. Keep in mind, art is a process. We'll make mistakes, and that's okay. That just gives us an opportunity to experiment and try something new. Now let's talk about painting a 2-dimensional pumpkin. We're going to use the same materials, watercolor paints and oil pastels. There are several different ways that you could draw a pumpkin. Here is one that I draw in sections. I started with an oval and then drew some letter C's forwards and backwards on either side to create the bumps in the pumpkin. Here I'm going to just use a really simple circle, create the stem. Looks kind of like a tomato. Threw some lines in there to show the different bumps and different ridges in the pumpkin. It still kind of looked like a tomato, so I changed the bottom a little bit to see if that would help. You don't have to draw your pumpkin the way I do. Look around the room. There are a lot of different visual examples of different types of pumpkins. Draw your pumpkin the way that it works best for you. So here I'm going to start off with putting some yellow in my high points on my pumpkin. So the parts of the pumpkin that are going to get hit by the sun, those are the points that I make the lightest. I got a little bit more yellow paint on this middle section than I wanted, so I filled my brush with a little bit of water, not a lot, and I use that to kind of pull up some of that yellow. I'm going back in with those midtones. So this is my medium part. This is where the highlight of my pumpkin starts going into the valleys. Then I'm going to go in with my darkest color, and here I'm using a red to create those shadowed areas that are near the bottom of my pumpkin and in those deeper grooves between the different sections of my pumpkin. And now that's kind of looking a little bit more like a pumpkin. It's kind of fun to see how all of those colors start blending and mixing together as well, because this whole area is pretty wet and watercolors do tend to bleed. I'm going to go ahead and do some color for my ground line just to kind of get that in place while I'm letting my pumpkin sit and dry a little bit before I do any more work there. I'm going to use my paintbrush to go ahead and draw a vine and some leaves for my pumpkin. It just makes it easier to get that line nice and thick than drawing it with a pencil. That's why I hadn't drawn it previously. I'm using this green here. It looks a little bit like an olive green, and I really like that, but as you can see in that dirt area, it's a little bit harder to see. So I'm going to come back in after I get my leaves drawn in here and try to define those vine lines and those leaf lines a little bit more. And I'm going to actually use oil pastels to do that, because those oil pastels will help sharpen up those edges of the vine a little bit better, but also pull it up off of the surface of the paper a little bit more. Right, remember friends that we are experimenting and exploring two different materials. We're seeing how they work well together and if we like the way they work together. So if it doesn't look the way you expected it to look, that's okay. We're just having some fun, seeing what we can do with the materials that we have and learning whether or not we like them.